She was a lovable 20-year-old who wanted nothing more than to protect and serve.
She had a passion for law enforcement and wanting to help people.
He was the hard-nosed cop who made her heart swoon.
She was looking for love, and she met a Prince Charming.
He was the man to have, the man to be with.
But their hope for a fairy tale future slipped away when one of them unexpectedly disappeared.
It began as a missing persons case. The young mother and her child missing was extremely concerning.
I'm looking for my daughter.
As the frantic search for mother and child intensifies, investigators soon find themselves caught in the middle of a case riddled with deception, subterfuge, and unspeakable evil.
It was all going to explode.
He had over 20 pictures of women in various naked poses that I guess he kept as souvenirs.
We all asked, where is the baby?
June 2nd, 2011. As evening falls in suburban Maryland, police are in the midst of a desperate search. 20-year-old Wynetta Wright and her 11-month-old daughter, Jalen, had been missing for 3 days.
Wynetta's mom, Yvette, became concerned because she hadn't been able to reach her daughter.
Wynetta's family was frantic because they knew how out of character it was for her to disappear. Immediately, they suspected something very bad had happened to her.
There are few clues pointing investigators in the right direction. Finally, police catch their first break.
Wynetta's car was located about a quarter of a mile away from the Hillcrest Heights Community Center in a apartment complex right on the Washington, D.C. line.
The car was parked in the very back of the parking lot, away from the building. It was hidden from view.
The vehicle also had tinted windows, which made it hard to see into the vehicle.
Called in.
Officers notified dispatch of their discovery. As they await a search warrant for the vehicle, they plan to keep a close eye on their first piece of evidence.
They crawl up and slap a GPS locate device on the car, and they sit back and watch it, hoping that whoever stole the car is going to come back and pick it up.
As police maintain surveillance on Wynetta's car, additional law enforcement fan out and search the area, including a nearby nature trail.
Police send out officers going in all directions. They expended a tremendous amount of man hours walking in the area, looking for any signs of Wynetta and her baby, Jalen.
While officers were searching the park, they located an odor which they believed could be decomposition of an animal or person.
Officers follow the scent, and around 7 p.m. that evening, they make a gruesome discovery.
Police went back into the woods, and there was a trail going back to the creek behind the park. Off to the right of the trail, they found Wynetta's body.
You're dealing with a young woman who's 20 years old. When her body was discovered, it was shocking and sad.
She was shot in the head, which is an indication of execution style. Usually that means that whoever shot you wanted you dead.
The investigation switched to a total different investigative unit. So the homicide unit will now take over, and myself and other members of my unit responded to the scene to take over the investigation.
But why had Wynetta Wright been targeted for murder? At this point, police have more questions than answers.
It could possibly have been one, that she's a female in the park alone. Someone sort of an opportunity. Could have been a sexual assault. Could have been a robbery.
It was very thick, wooded area where she was discovered, and would lead me to believe that she was pulled into the woods out of view of the public so she wouldn't be found.
There's a reason for any homicide, whether it be for money, whether it be for love, whether it be for a vendetta.
We needed to determine who she was with and who she was speaking with, or if it was just a random act.
But as chilling as these scenarios are, there's one burning question in everyone's mind. Where is Wynetta's beloved baby girl, Jalen?
There are two people involved, a mother, which we have found, but we don't have the missing child. So that makes it more of a mystery. Where is this child?
Born in 1990, Wynetta Wright grew up in a home filled with laughter and love.
Wynetta was a sweet young lady. Her mom was always there for her, and same with her dad. She had a very supportive group behind her.
As it turned out, Wynetta would need that family's support. By the tender age of 16, she became pregnant with her first child.
Like most teenage pregnancies, the teenage father usually don't stick around. So now she's a single parent and she has to raise that child to the best of her ability.
It wasn't a handicap for her. If anything, it kind of inspired her. And she was determined to make a good life for herself and for her child.
After graduating from high school, she had this ambition about becoming a police officer. And that's when she joined the Prince George's County Sheriff Department Explorer Program.
The Explorers program is a program for, young people who are interested in law enforcement. It just kind of gives them a behind the scenes look at what this profession is like.
The Explorers program showed Juanetta her dream of becoming a police officer was within her grasp. But Juanetta also longed to find that special someone to share her life with.
Women, like anybody else, they want love, they want care, they want someone to be there for them. And Juanetta was the same way.
For Juanetta, Cupid finally came calling when she walked into a D.C. nightclub in 2009 and locked eyes with 37-year-old Richmond Phillips.
She was looking for love, and she met a Prince Charming.
Ladies. All right. Lorraine, have fun.
Thank you.
Right. Well, hello.
Hi.
You are gorgeous.
Thank you.
Miss Juanetta Wright, huh?
Yes.
He was working part-time at that particular club, but he was also employed as a police officer.
He worked as an investigator in the Vice Narcotics, looking for drug sales out on the street.
He had a job that was like something that you would see in a movie. He worked in one of the most difficult jobs in the department with the street level thugs, drug dealers.
He had dreadlocks, tattoos. He could pass for any street thug.
For Juanetta, Richmond's high-stakes job detail, coupled with his undeniable charm and good looks, made him irresistible.
Juanetta was, I think, fascinated with police officers. She was herself interested in becoming a sheriff. He's a very charismatic man. And I believe that she was attracted to him because he was charismatic.
Despite a nearly 20-year age difference, Juanetta and Richmond quickly formed a deep and passionate bond.
Both of them were smitten, and they started to see each other on a regular basis.
She was having feelings for him. And when feelings comes into play, there's intimacy involved.
Relationship began to heat up. And then she got pregnant.
Already raising one child, Juanetta hoped Richmond would step up and become the husband and father she'd always dreamed of having.
Juanetta had the dream, to grow up, get married, have a family, a white picket fence, a dog, and a nice house, and a husband to take care of them.
But when Juanetta broke the news of her pregnancy to Richmond, his reaction was decidedly cool.
Something I need to tell you.
Oh, no.
We can make this work,
Look,
Richmond.
I've already told you about this, okay?
But we can be a family.
Be a family. Family. Look, if this the way you want to play it, then fine. Because I'm not going to have any parts of this, okay?
He drops her like a hot potato and literally walks away. That did not stop Juanetta. She decided she's going to raise that child with or without Richmond Phillips.
On June 6, 2010, Juanetta gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Jalen. Though Richmond made it clear he didn't want to be a father, Juanetta hoped Jalen's birth might prompt a change of heart.
She wanted Richmond to be involved in Jalen's life and be a part of it.
She'd never requested anything from him, not money, not support for the child. She just wanted him to have a relationship with his daughter.
But nearly a year after Jalen was born, that dream seemed a far reach from reality. Richmond had ceased all communication with Juanetta. Even so, Juanetta was determined to make the best life possible for her and her children.
Despite the fact that he had left her, Juanetta had great goals in life that she was very likely to reach and was in the process of doing so. She was going forward, never stopped going forward.
But that all changed on the evening of May 30th, 2011, when Juanetta and baby Jalen unexpectedly disappeared. Juanetta's mother, Yvette, began to worry after the two had not been seen for nearly 24 hours.
Juanetta was reported missing by her mother. She provided a description of, her daughter or her granddaughter in the vehicle. Officers immediately went out, canvassing the area looking for the vehicle.
2 days later, they found Juanetta shot in the head.
As they scramble to make sense of this brutal scene, detectives can't help but wonder if Juanetta's infant daughter has suffered a similar fate.
You're looking for the next clue and the next piece of the story. It's like reading a good novel where you can't stop turning the pages.
June 2nd, 2011. It's been 3 days since single mother of two Juanetta Wright and her 11-month-old daughter Jalen went missing. After countless hours of searching, the hunt for Juanetta has come to a tragic end.
Police found the body of Juanetta in the wooded area of a park. She had received one gunshot wound to the head.
She just seemed like a normal young woman who was trying to create a life for herself and for her family.
For friends and family, Juanetta's death is devastating. But equally disturbing is the fact that Juanetta's 11-month-old baby girl Jalen is also missing.
Immediately when Juanetta's body was found, we all asked, where is Jalen?
The baby was gone. It could have been a kidnapping, could have been a murder, could have been a robbery gone bad. We know the baby obviously couldn't care for herself. And so finding Jalen was huge.
While search teams continue to canvass the area where Juanetta's body was discovered, a quarter-mile away, the officers monitoring her vehicle get the green light to initiate a search of it.
After Juanetta was found in the park, contact was made with the officers that were watching her vehicle. At that point, we made a decision that we should check the vehicle.
But when officers open the vehicle's door, it's obvious something is terribly wrong.
Officers got closer and discovered, oh my God, there's a baby in the backseat of the car.
It was Jalen. There was blood coming out of her nose and mouth. It was clear that she was dead. The police officer that found Jalen, he cried. He's a veteran of the police force. Just devastating.
It was just a very heartbreaking for everybody. The officers wept. Everybody was very affected by it.
Equally devastating is the infant's apparent cause of death.
Jalen had died because of heat exhaustion and sitting in that car.
The windows were rolled up on this car, and the temperature, according to the forensic reports, could have been as high as 125 degrees inside that vehicle.
With baby Jalen's death confirmed, investigators are more determined than ever to catch the killer. But the number of crime scenes they have to process has also just doubled.
The vehicle was processed by our evidence unit and submitted to our lab. We have investigators looking for any evidence that might be in the woods or in the surrounding area.
Investigators find their next big clue in the same park where Juanetta's body was found.
A detective actually looked down and he saw what he believed to be blood almost in the middle of the picnic table, and subsequently located a shell casing very near to that picnic table.
The round that was recovered was a .22 caliber bullet.
The shell casing was very important in the case because it told us,
officer,
what type of weapon she was killed with.
We found a casing right over here.
DNA connected the blood from the gunshot wound from her head to the blood found right under the table. What we didn't have was a gun.
Police can't help but wonder what Juanetta and her baby girl were doing in the park in the first place.
It's a daytime park. There was evidence that we discovered later of people drinking there and doing inappropriate things. So it's probably not the safest place for a young woman to be with a 1-year-old late at night. Juanetta could have gone to the park to meet someone, and someone could have come by and robbed her, and she fought them, and they shot her as a result.
Could have been a robbery gone bad, and when the carjacker or the robber found out that he had a car with a baby in it, he just dropped the car off.
Juanetta's car was found approximately a quarter-mile away from the park. It was an apartment complex.
With so many question marks surrounding the case, police turned to the community for help.
Police started conducting interviews with several people in her neighborhood, her family members, trying to determine if someone wanted her dead.
Juanetta's mother immediately offers up the name of a possible suspect, her daughter's ex-boyfriend and Jalen's father, Richmond Phillips.
Family members began to share information with the investigators about this man. He was a police officer. He worked undercover. In addition to that, he lived not far from Hillcrest Heights Park, right in that same area.
When detectives learned that Richmond Phillips only lived a mile from there, that was a very interesting fact to them.
Not only does Richmond live near the scene of the crime, but those close to Winnetta claim that in the 11 months since Jalen's birth, Richmond has made it crystal clear he wants nothing to do with Winnetta or his new baby daughter.
He didn't want anything further to do with her. Didn't contact her anymore. He went on about his business.
Detectives make plans to question Richmond, but before they do, someone else beats them to it.
Winetta's mom had gone to, Richmond Phillips' house to confront him.
Hello? Where is Richmond Phillips? Who are you? You need to go in there and you need to find him.
It was quite a scene. Winetta's mother, she said, you know what? You have 30 minutes before I come in your house.
As tempers flare, detectives also arrive at the Phillips residence in search of Richmond.
It's okay, calm down.
Moments later, the man at the center of this storm pulls up.
What the hell is going on?
Yes.
Her in person.
Richmond Phillips?
Yeah?
We need to speak to you a moment.
Investigators order Winetta's mom to stay on the porch so they can speak with Richmond one-on-one. They inform Richmond that Winnetta and Jalen have seemingly been murdered. The reaction isn't quite what they expected from the man Winnetta's mother fingered as the crime's #1 suspect.
Do you have any information? You know them, right?
Yes, I do.
He was genuinely concerned and wanted to help find whoever did this to Jalen and to Winnetta.
Have you seen her at all, or have you?
I haven't spoke with him in about a year.
Not only does Richmond seem genuinely distraught by the news of Winnetta and Jalen's deaths, but he also has an alibi for the night police believe the crimes occurred.
He said he hadn't seen her in a year. He stated that he in fact had worked the evening shift that night.
To verify his alibi, investigators reach out to Richmond's superiors with the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department. It turns out Richmond is telling the truth.
Richmond Phillips' story was very believable. There was no problem, and the investigation continued.
But if Richmond Phillips isn't behind this terrible crime, then who is? Soon, another discovery will shift the investigation into overdrive and bring another man from Winnetta's past into the limelight. It's been nearly a week since police in Maryland began investigating the gut-wrenching double homicide of aspiring police officer, 20-year-old Winnetta Wright, and her baby daughter, Jalen. Winnetta's body was found in the woods of a nearby park, the victim of an apparent gunshot wound. Baby Jalen's body was found a quarter of a mile away in her mother's car.
Both there was children, technically, and those lives have been snuffed out and taken away. Law enforcement is making sure that justice is served.
When someone shoots someone in the head, they want you dead. We know that whoever committed this crime had to have been close to this person. There was some passion somewhere there at some point.
Initially, investigators suspect Winnetta's ex-boyfriend, D.C. police officer Richmond Phillips, had committed both crimes. But when Phillips' superiors at work verify his alibi, investigators find themselves back at square one.
They had two crime scenes. They had her vehicle, which had the child in it, and then they also had where her body was found in the woods. So they knew someone had taken her there. But who was that someone? From that point, you work backwards and you interview everyone that, may have information.
Speaking to Winnetta's immediate family, detectives soon make a troubling new discovery. Apparently, on the night of Winnetta's disappearance, the young mother had paid someone else a visit, another former lover, and the father of her first child, a man by the name of Wayne Miller.
Police learned that he did have contact with Winnetta within 24 hours of her death.
Winnetta dropped their other child off with Wayne, and Wayne was going to watch his child for a couple of days.
Like Richmond Phillips, Wayne Miller didn't live far from the park where Winnetta was shot.
The police had to do their due diligence and talk to him and see what kind of alibi or what kind of story he was going to provide to them.
Hoping to get some answers, detectives bring Wayne Miller in for questioning.
Mr. Miller, we're here to talk about the death of Winnetta Wright.
What? She's dead?
Yes.
No, she can't be dead. I just seen her the other day.
When I spoke with Wayne, he was very upset and provided as much detail and information as he could about Winnetta and his relationship with her.
When was the last time you saw Juanetta?
2 days ago.
Where were you the night of her death? I mean, did she drop the child off? Did you go anywhere after that?
No, I stayed at home. We watched movies all night.
They had a very good relationship, and they were sharing custody of their daughter together.
He was actually helping care for his daughter, providing her with financial support, and had no reason to do Juanetta any harm. We had extreme or lengthy conversations with him, and it was determined that he did have an alibi, that he was not involved in any way.
For detectives, it's yet another dead end.
You're trying to get to the truth. And so each step along the way, you know there's something more. And as an investigator, you're looking for the next clue and the next piece of the story.
But a week after Juanetta's body was discovered, police receive a startling new lead. One that points them back in the direction of a prior suspect.
I spoke to Juanetta's cousin, and she told me that she was actually on the phone with her when Juanetta arrived at the park, and that she was going to the park to meet someone.
Juanetta had let her cousin know that she was going to meet with Jalen's father, Richmond Phillips.
She was really excited. She had Jalen dressed up in a beautiful flower dress. It was the first time that she was going to show Jalen to her father.
Police are stunned. Earlier, Richmond had told detectives he hadn't seen Juanetta in a year. Now, one of Juanetta's cousins has allegedly placed him at the scene of the crime.
Juanetta was on the phone with a cousin, going to meet Richmond Phillips in a park, and spoke to her on the cell phone and said, "Here he is now."
But for police, the reemergence of Richmond Phillips as a potential suspect is at odds with what they know about this highly respected officer and his alibi.
Richmond Phillips was a police officer, and then he swore an oath just like I did.
This is a veteran police vice officer. There's no way he could think he could get away with anything like this. He couldn't be that dumb. It just didn't make any sense.
Killing a woman, dragging her to the woods, and leaving his own child to die in a vehicle. It's just very hard to believe that an officer would do that.
Also lending credence to Richmond's innocence is the type of weapon believed to have been used in the attack.
Juanetta was shot with a .22 caliber weapon. Well, that's not standard police issue weapons.
Police officers don't carry the .22 caliber as a service weapon. We also checked Richmond Phillips' gun registry to see if he had owned any weapons, and in fact, he did not own a .22 caliber gun.
Outside of the statement made by Juanetta's cousin, none of the physical or circumstantial evidence points to Richmond as the culprit. But with no other credible leads, detectives decide to dig deeper into their fellow officer's background.
I brought his entire squad in to interview each one of them to see if there could be anything relevant to the case that they might know.
As the stories of the veteran cop begin to stream out, detectives learn that Richmond's personal life was more complicated than they initially realized.
Richmond Phillips was married. He lived with his mom, his wife, and his 12-year-old daughter.
He looked like a family man from all appearances, but his whole life was a lie. He had these other relationships.
Detectives wonder if Richmond's affair with Juanetta and the child he had with her could be a motive for murder.
Richmond Phillips made a ton of motive to get rid of Juanetta and to get rid of his child so he didn't have to worry about a second life and paying for a child and causing problems at his own home with his own wife and daughter living there with him.
But the fact that Richmond Phillips is a married man also adds another potential suspect to the list.
The wife possibly was jealous and had gone to that location and killed Juanetta.
So the plot thickens, and we're starting to build a profile of his wife.
Police waste no time in speaking with Richmond's wife, Rita.
We interviewed Richmond Phillips' wife to see what knowledge she had of Juanetta.
Were you aware that your husband was seeing Juanetta?
Absolutely not. I can't believe he would do this.
This was very painful for her. She was a wife of 15 years. She said he came home every night, took their child to school each day. So she was very shocked by this.
I hope you understand that with the death of Juanetta and her baby, we have to investigate everyone. You're sure you didn't know about the affair?
I'm positive. I mean, I had no idea.
You had absolutely nothing to do with her murder.
No, I didn't have anything to do with this. I was out of town.
Richmond Phillips' wife had been away that weekend and not near the park.
We don't believe that she was involved in this in any way.
But as police close the book on Richmond's wife, they discover she isn't the only woman who might want Juanetta out of the way.
Richmond Phillips was somewhat complex, should I say. He had other female interests.
We found a ton of naked pictures on his phone, naked pictures in his locker. Richmond Phillips was a womanizer.
Police in suburban Maryland are investigating the heartbreaking murders of Winnetta Wright and her infant child, Jaylen. Initially, the investigation focused on Jaylen's father, D.C. police officer Richmond Phillips. However, upon discovering Officer Phillips was married, detectives wonder if his wife Rita could have gotten wind of the affair and killed Winnetta and Jaylen in a jealous rage.
The wife had been away that weekend and had come home. We knew from her cell records that she was back at the Phillips home at the time and not near the park. She was completely innocent.
But within hours of eliminating Richmond's wife as a suspect, police uncover a slew of evidence that suggests any number of women might have wanted Winnetta dead.
Upon speaking with people that he worked with, we found out that he had several women. He was kind of a womanizer.
In fact, in his locker at work, he had over 20 pictures of women in various naked poses that I guess he kept as souvenirs.
We needed to determine their relationships to see if one of them may have been jealous that he had had a child by another woman.
But with only partial photos of these anonymous women to work from, tracking down all of them seems like an insurmountable task. But among the cache of nude photos, there's one woman police recognize, a fellow officer by the name of Karen Hope.
You recognize her?
Is that Karen from the department?
Yeah.
She had a year-long relationship with Richmond Phillips. She worked at the police department with him. He met her there.
Hoping this could be the break they need, detectives bring Karen in for questioning.
Thanks for coming in and talking to us. We appreciate it.
No problem, anytime.
Okay. We need to know a little bit more about your relationship with Richmond Phillips.
The investigators talked to her for hours. How close was this woman, the mistress, and Mr. Phillips?
Well, we really didn't have too much of a relationship. It was more just casual sex.
Karen was very cooperative. She told me that she developed a sexual relationship with him and that she would meet him at various hotels just for that reason.
You weren't aware that he was already a married man?
Oh, no, I definitely wasn't aware he was a married man.
He was. And he was also seeing Winnetta on the side.
No, I've never heard anything about Winnetta.
The possibility that Karen had something to do with it was questioned. It was ruled out. She gave a credible alibi where she was, had nothing to do with it.
But as the interview winds down, Karen reveals a piece of information that leaves detectives floored.
He'd get undressed and I would just notice he'd have a gun attached to his ankle.
He would carry a second weapon?
Yeah, a pistol, 22 caliber pistol.
She told us that she had seen him with an ankle holster on and that he had removed a 22 caliber gun from an ankle holster, which was not his service weapon.
It was consistent with the shell casing that was recovered at the scene.
They believed that that was the type of gun that killed Winnetta Wright.
Karen provided me with information about the alternate duty weapon that Richmond Phillips carried on his ankle, and I knew that a 22 caliber bullet had killed Winnetta.
While investigators believe Karen's statement about the gun, Richmond Phillips' alibi still seems airtight.
He was working the evening shift that night as a police officer.
But when officers ask around, they discover that Richmond was actually on patrol in the area near the park the night Winnetta disappeared.
Richmond Phillips was alone the night of the murder.
Without a partner to verify his whereabouts that evening, Richmond's patrol schedule clearly gave him a window of opportunity to murder Winnetta. Soon after that, investigators make another alarming discovery about Richmond.
So as the investigators continued to plow through evidence, they learned that the very next day after her body was found, Winnetta was supposed to have been in paternity court against Richmond Phillips.
She decided to file for a paternity test to try to get some child support from him.
Winnetta has some very strong women in her life, and they had begun to get in her ear in terms of, hey, this guy needs to be held responsible for what he's contributed to the situation.
The paternity suit would have required Phillips to pay support for Jaylen. Plus, he would have been ordered to include her on his health care coverage.
When we start connecting the dots, Everything is now starting to align back to Mr. Phillips. He did go to the court that day for the paternity test and for the paternity hearing in the family court. But why would he even voluntarily agree to do that?
But as investigators know, there's only one way to find out for sure.
We needed to speak with Richmond Phillips immediately.
It's been a week since the brutal slaying of Winnetta Wright and her baby Jalen. Police have zeroed in on their prime suspect, married cop Richmond Phillips, who not only had motive and opportunity to kill his mistress and their child, but also means.
Richmond had multiple relationships with various women, and it was determined through one of the females he had contact with, Karen. She had observed him at one point with a weapon on his ankle.
She said that when Richmond would get undressed, she would see a small handgun strapped to his ankle. Exactly the type of weapon that killed Winnetta.
Richmond Phillips really wanted to avoid a paternity suit with Winnetta, didn't want to acknowledge that this was his daughter, and did not want to have to pay her any amount of money.
It is very likely the judge would have told Richmond Phillips that he had to part with a significant portion of his paycheck. And it seemed to all involved that Richmond Phillips did not want to do that.
But court documents related to a paternity hearing between Richmond and Winnetta seemed to poke a hole in that theory.
But what was interesting is how, at that point, he voluntarily told the court, I'll take a paternity test, sure, no problem. So why would he agree to do that?
Detectives aren't sure, but one possibility is that perhaps Winnetta and Richmond weren't as estranged as everyone thought they were.
We're looking for the things that we can test his story against, and you can see his story starting to evolve.
He had said he hadn't seen her and hadn't talked to her, but phone records show that wasn't the case.
He called her over 100 times the month prior to that paternity test. He tried to reach out to her repeatedly, so his desperation grew as the test came closer. His intention was to convince her not to go forward with this paternity test.
But the frequent calls to Winnetta aren't the only thing Richmond's phone records reveal.
Well, his phone records put his phone in the vicinity of this Hillcrest Heights Community Center park on the night of this crime. It showed as well that there was contact earlier in the evening.
With phone records placing Richmond at the park the suspected night of the crime, detectives pay a visit to the park's manager, who supplies them with surveillance videos from the evening of May 30th through the early morning hours of May 31st.
The surveillance tape confirmed that Winnetta and Richmond Phillips were in fact in this park together. It confirmed the time that he arrived at the park at about 10:30 at night, and also confirmed the two of them coming together to talk. The surveillance showed his vehicle and her vehicle coming into the park that night. It showed the two of them sitting at a picnic table talking.
They stayed there for approximately 8 hours and sat on a picnic bench and talked.
We assumed he was trying to talk her out of making him take the paternity test. In court the next day,
The surveillance video kind of crystallized all these leads that were a little bit loose. It really tied it all together.
But it's what the surveillance captures just before 6 a.m. on May 31st that's arguably the most damning.
The cameras in the park scan the park. They're not fixed cameras. And so we have Richmond Phillips there with her about 4 minutes before her death. And the next time the camera comes around, her body is laying back on a picnic table.
And then as the camera continues to zoom, the next cycle through, the picnic table's empty. There's nobody there.
At that point, I guess he decides, well, I better hide the body.
So the surveillance video showed not necessarily the crime, but it showed the events leading up to it and the events afterward.
What's worse is that just hours after Richmond Phillips was caught on the park surveillance video, he seemed unaffected.
Richmond Phillips continued his day. He then went to the courthouse and attended the paternity hearing, gave his DNA as he was supposed to.
Investigators knew at that point Mr. Phillips was a suspect for homicide. So the investigators decide to bring Mr. Phillips in.
With video evidence in hand, investigators bring Officer Richmond Phillips in for another round of questioning.
In the beginning, Richmond Phillips is cool as a cucumber going through this interview. He's got this charade going perfectly.
I didn't know if she left, moved, what. I haven't seen her in over a year. So no contact this year at all?
Because of that surveillance system video, I now knew that he had in fact lied to me, that he had seen her more recently than a year.
When he was confronted with the fact that, guess what? There's a surveillance tape. Then he starts backpedaling.
Did that happen? Do you remember meeting her there? I met the other lady there.
Eventually, he started to change his story and say that he had met up with her. So we started picking through inconsistencies in his statement.
Oh, I was there, but I left at 3:30. No, you weren't. Your texts show you there. We can see you open the car door at a certain point in the morning. Did she ever try to give you the baby? No, she didn't. Well, why were you walking over to the car? Well, she tried to give me the baby to hold.
You told me a second ago you watched her leave. You now know that that's not possible because she's actually killed that with it. Put her in her car and drive away. Something happens to her at that spot.
Richmond Phillips said that he had left her early in the morning, and he's not sure what had happened to her. She was still at the park when he left.
You see where things are pointing to. Some type of confrontation happened between you and her, which ultimately caused her death. That's basically what I'm saying. I can't say anything happened to her besides we talk.
After hours of cat and mouse, detectives are done playing games. They charge Richmond Phillips with 2 counts of murder.
You're under arrest. Okay, I'm under arrest.
At that point, he asked for an attorney, and officers from his agency actually came and took his weapon and badge and told him that he was suspended from the police department.
No outrage, no, how could you do this to me? I'm a cop. He knew.
But even with Officer Phillips in custody, authorities know they have a long way to go before justice is served. And the question still remains, would a jury really believe a husband, father, and respected officer like Richmond Phillips was a cold-blooded killer at heart?
The defense was banking on the fact that people would not believe a police officer to be capable of such horrific crime.
On January 14th, 2013, more than a year after the deaths of Winnetta Wright and her infant daughter, Jalen, former police officer Richmond Phillips is led into a Maryland courtroom to stand trial for their murders.
It was just kind of a shocker to everyone that somebody who was sworn to serve and protect his community would kill not only an ex-girlfriend, but his own daughter, his flesh and blood.
Affected everybody. It was hard to see or hear this and not to feel affected by it. It really resonated across our community, and everyone wanted to see justice done.
This wasn't just a family quest for justice. This was a community quest for justice. The highest ranking prosecutor in Prince George's County personally tried this case herself.
All of these crimes affect me, but there is something about hearing that a baby is murdered that calls you and says, you know what, I think I have to take this one. I'll take this one.
In their opening statements, prosecutors assert that around 10:30 on the night of May 30th, 2011, Richmond lured his ex-girlfriend to the Hillcrest Heights Park in suburban Maryland to discuss her pending paternity suit.
Juanetta wanted her daughter to have a father, and I believe that's what she was trying to meet up with them.
That first time, Jalen was going to meet her father, and Winnetta dressed her up and just made her look so beautiful so that he would see her and want to love her and have her in his life.
Prosecutors say Richmond refused to see Jalen, and for the next 8 hours begged Winnetta not to go through with the paternity hearing.
I want you to be in her life. She's a beautiful girl.
I told you before you had that baby that I didn't want to have no parts of it.
If we can't figure this out, I'm just gonna have to go through with the paternity test tomorrow.
Paternity? No. This is too much for me.
I'm sorry. I
can't handle this.
When it became clear that Winnetta had no intention of dropping her claim, Richmond drew his .22 caliber pistol and pulled the trigger in the early morning hours of May 31st.
He shoots Winnetta in the head, takes her body into the woods, takes Winnetta's car with Jalen strapped in the car seat out, drives it around the corner, and he puts it in an apartment complex in a visitor parking spot. And so He left her there in the broad daylight to just cook, then walks home.
Memorial Day weekend in May of 2011 was very hot, one of the hottest days of the summer. And to take your own child around and leave him in a parking lot with the windows rolled up just shows that he had no regard for the child's life.
As for Richmond's appearance in paternity court later that day, prosecutors claimed that too was part of his plan.
He showed up for court the next day because he knew the child and Juanetta would never make it to that courtroom.
Mr. Richmond figured that this was a creative way to avoid paying child support.
He wanted to hide the fact from his family, his wife and child, that he had a girlfriend and another child.
Well, the paternity suit would have destroyed his ability to be out as a womanizer, because once the scientific test established that he was Jalen's dad, there was no plausible deniability with his wife.
To back up their theory, prosecutors introduced the park surveillance tape as evidence.
Last time we see Juanetta alive, she's sitting on the table. Richmond Phillips is standing over her right shoulder. And that's the last way we see her. About 2 minutes later, her feet have fallen off the chair and she is just laid back. Her feet are hanging over the side of the bench.
The surveillance video is damning evidence, as are the witnesses prosecutors called to the stand.
We had about 25 witnesses testify. His mistress came in and identified the handgun. It matched to the bullet in the place where the bullet belonged. The DNA with the blood underneath Juanetta's head on the picnic table. All of it fit together seamlessly.
One of the most poignant and heartbreaking things was when the detective that found the baby testified. He came to that trial at least a year or so removed from the actual event, and he cried like it was yesterday. If he's gotten therapy, I can understand why.
When it's their turn to counter, Richmond's defense team claims that rather than proving their client's guilt, the surveillance video does just the opposite.
They said just because the video showed him with her seconds before she was laying over the picnic table, that doesn't necessarily in and of itself mean that he did something to her. Maybe there was somebody else in the park that day.
Furthermore, there's the matter of the missing murder weapon.
We were never able to find the .22 caliber handgun. Never found during the course of investigation.
The defense also claims that their client simply wasn't capable of violence on this scale. His job was to protect and serve, not to murder and deceive.
People have great respect, in the most part, for police officers. And the defense felt their case was very strong. He's a trusted police officer and an esteemed member of the community.
On January 17th, 2013, both sides rest their cases. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with its verdict.
Your heart's in your throat before any verdict is read. So this was a nervous moment, waiting for justice to be done for this baby and for this young mother.
When the judge instructed me to read the verdict, I turned to Mr. Phillips, and I never faced evil like that in my life.
He locked eyes with him to read guilty. It was a very powerful moment in the courtroom, very powerful.
And according to jurors, any lingering doubts about the defendant's guilt were put to rest by one simple thing: Richmond Phillips walk.
During the course of the trial, Mr. Phillips would get up and walk from the counsel table to the bench.
And that walk was compared to the surveillance video, and it was the same walk. That walk was the final linchpin for everyone, especially the ladies. It was pretty much a wrap after that.
Richmond Phillips was sentenced to double life without the possibility of parole. And there were gun charges as well. And so he hopefully will spend the rest of his life in jail.
Although justice was ultimately served in this case, it can't replace the 2 young lives that were taken that fateful day in 2011. The life of an innocent child and the life of a woman who dreamed of becoming a police officer, only to fall in love with and then fall victim to a killer cop masquerading as one of the good guys.
I think that she could not conceive of someone who appeared to be so responsible, so confident, so sophisticated, could turn out to be the monster that he did. I think she trusted him. I think she loved him. I don't think until the moment he shot her that she believed he would hurt her, much less their child.
The person she saw on the surface was a person who was okay to trust. An officer of the law, an older man, a person who probably made her laugh. She had no idea that her attraction to him would cause her death and eventually would cause the death of her baby. And she had no idea who she'd met that night and what he was capable of.
He was a wealthy former football star.
Some people say he was blessed by God to be so athletically talented.
Whatever he did, he wanted to be the best at it.
She was an independent divorcee looking for a second chance at love.
Melody was a girl that knew what she wanted and how to get it.
Together, they fueled each other's wildest desires.
She was enjoying the sexual benefits of the relationship, and he was enjoying the same.
Until one day that flame is extinguished forever.
The only thoughts that came to my mind was who would do something like that.
To me, it was like an assassination.
The crime sends police scrambling to track down a sophisticated killer.
The only reason to set a fire after the fact is to conceal and hide evidence.
What investigators find in the ashes is a twisted tale of wild sex, bold-faced lies, and cold-blooded murder.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. The rumors that were out there.
We thought of him as this big, strong man. It was a shock.
He was murdered in a cruel and horrible way. The community demanded that there be justice.
Sylvania Township, Ohio, a middle-class suburb of Toledo. On the morning of July 4th, 2011, residents are getting ready for a perfect day of hot dogs, fireworks, friends, and family. But on Inland Drive, the smoke coming from one residence isn't coming from a backyard barbecue. It's coming from inside the house.
Fire department arrived. They could see smoke emanating from the house. There's flames and everything like that.
When firefighters are going into a house, their immediate focus is on, number one, fighting the fire, but also finding anybody who might be in the house alive.
The home is owned by 58-year-old L.C. Lyons Jr. The team of firemen fight their way through the house, searching for L.C. along the way. They eventually reach the master bedroom. The entire room is ablaze, but through the thick smoke, they see a charred body lying on the bed.
I'm sure that when they initially came upon this person and saw his condition, you can pretty much tell that somebody has already hit the point of no return.
Firefighters continue battling the blaze. Meanwhile, Elsie's mother, Ella Brown, has arrived, having been contacted by the home security company.
This is my son's house. Is he okay? Where is he?
I don't have any information right now. Let me go ahead and get somebody that can help you out, okay? Stay tight right here, okay?
It had to have been a very traumatic situation for the family to see the house in flames, but you don't see your loved one. And so must have been these agonizing minutes that stretched as you waited to find out where is Elsie.
Miss Brown, I regret to inform you that we did find a body of an adult male inside the home.
Elsie.
She took it very, very hard. I'm a mother myself, and I couldn't even imagine having to bury one of my children.
I'm sure that the initial feeling was, no way, this couldn't happen to him. Somebody always seems to come out on top.
He was an all-around good guy. Friendly, would speak to you, but you would never expect anything like this.
Born in 1953, L.C. Lyons Jr. grew up in Toledo, Ohio. From the start, he was a person who looked out for others.
My mom was like his buddy. I'm the youngest, but that was her baby. He would take over a room with his personality. And his laughter and he has so much joy, man.
A supremely gifted athlete, L.C. accepted a football scholarship to Ohio University, where he became a star running back.
L.C. Lyons had the potential to be a great Toledo success story. Some people say he was blessed by God to be so athletically talented, was a great football player at one of the local high schools here, wound up getting a football scholarship to one of the top universities in Ohio.
I remember a game when he played Kent State his senior year, and he rushed for like 158 yards for 41 carries, and that's still in the record books at OU.
What's more, L.C. placed second in the Mid-American Conference for rushing yards in 1974 and seemed destined for greatness.
There are many people who thought that he might have a very good opportunity to play in the National Football League, but for a variety of reasons, it just didn't work out for him.
Unfortunately, he was not drafted.
With his dreams of a career in the NFL over, LC returned to Toledo to start the second chapter of his life. He soon landed a job as a security guard, a far cry from the life of a pro football star he had imagined for himself.
He could have just been satisfied in this job working as a security guard, but it sounds like he was a little bit more motivated than most.
LC sacked away as much money as he could, then parlayed his savings into a successful wholesale clothing business.
He would go to New York, get clothes, bring back. He always brought back the good stuff.
He'd always have clothing at his house or in his car.
With his clothing business providing a steady stream of cash, LC began to dabble in real estate and quickly discovered he had a knack for it.
He figured out that he could make some money working in real estate, so he made a good amount of money flipping houses.
By the time he turned 40, this local football star turned real estate tycoon had earned a lot of money, but more importantly, a lot of respect.
If you needed anything, if you were down to your last, he would give you the shirt off his back. Everybody loved LC.
LC's kind heart, stout physique, and sizable bank account earned him the attention of more than a few eligible bachelorettes.
He never was alone, I tell you that. He had long-term relationships, but he never was married.
He was gonna always be LC.
But in recent years, friends had noticed that the lifelong bachelor had begun to yearn for something more meaningful. Then in early 2011, LC met 48-year-old Melody Williams. The two were instantly drawn to one another.
LC is attracted to beautiful women, obviously, and Melody was small, petite, she was fun-loving, and LC liked that about her.
And at 48 years old, Melody was closer in age to LC than most of the women he'd been dating.
Melody is a very good-looking woman who's in very good physical condition, very attractive. So you can see the connection that these two might have.
I'm LC.
Melody. Here's two attractive people who seem to take pretty good care of themselves and had similar interests.
Like LC, Melody was no slouch professionally. She'd retired early after a successful career at a nearby Chrysler Jeep auto plant.
Working at Jeep in Toledo is the job that you want. If you're from here, you get in your early 20s, you're out in your mid 40s, you have a retirement package, you have money saved up.
I think he saw in Melanie someone that he could have a relationship with, but not necessarily have to support her financially.
As for Melody Williams, she was recently divorced and saw in LC a second chance at love.
Melody may have been at a point in her life where she was looking to find a man that might treat her, a little bit better than the previous relationship that she was in.
And something else was pretty good too.
She was enjoying the sexual benefits of the relationship, and he was enjoying the same.
These two people were coming into this relationship with a lot of physical attraction.
Chemistry in the bedroom wasn't all LC and Melody had going for them. There seemed to be a real emotional connection there as well. But on Independence Day 2011, LC and Melody's budding romance is tragically cut short. It starts when firefighters discover LC's badly charred remains inside his master bedroom.
So when they initially went into the house, they're obviously looking to see if anybody is alive in the house, but instead they find a large male inside of his bed, inside of the home. Of course, they don't know if it's his bed at the time, but they find a large male naked, lying in a pool of blood, and burned beyond recognition.
The police, they had a great question on their hand. Who was responsible for this? What kind of evidence can we get from this scene that might lead to whoever is responsible?
I think that it was because it was the 4th of July that maybe there was some thought that it was something maybe like a firework or something like that, that had gone off.
Is this fire an accident or arson?
Fire officials said that several fires had been set throughout the house and that somebody had intentionally set the fire in the hopes of the entire house going down.
If this crime was arson, then what was the motive? And was LC the intended target? Or was the perpetrator after something else? When investigators finally learn the truth, it will stun everyone in this quiet Toledo suburb.
That really is an eye-opener because it's not something you expect in your community.
When he met the wealthy and beautiful Melody Williams, 58-year-old real estate mogul Elsie Lyons Jr. thought he'd finally met his perfect match.
It was a pretty intense relationship in the early stages. Here's two attractive people who seem to take pretty good care of themselves.
But only months into the relationship, their torrid romance was extinguished on July 4th, 2011, when firefighters arrived at Elsie's sprawling home and found him dead inside.
I was the on-call detective that day, so I got a phone call to come in because it wasn't what you'd see in a typical fire. They discovered that there were actually 5 deliberate fires set inside this home.
After determining the number of fires the perpetrator set, investigators find a crucial, albeit unusual clue: green-tipped wooden matchsticks.
I've never heard anybody using green tip matches.
Hoping these unique matchsticks could ultimately help identify a suspect, investigators bag them as evidence. They also reach out to Elsie's family. Their goal, to better understand why someone would target his house for arson.
He was well liked in the community. Elsie had a lot of friends. He really did.
I don't personally know of any enemies that Elsie had.
The only motive the family can think of is theft.
I think it was a robbery.
Yes, it was a robbery. Elsie always
It had to be a
money lying
robbery.
around.
Everyone always said that he had a very, very prized possession of his, which was a medallion of a lion head, and he always had that on.
It seems Elsie's favorite pendant is missing from the home. Could a thief have broken in the previous evening and then torched the home to destroy any evidence?
This was someone that was really intent on committing this robbery and was trying to figure out all the details to commit it.
That theory gains traction when Elsie's mother informs investigators that she noticed one of Elsie's cars, a gray Nissan, was missing from his driveway at the time of the fire.
When we found out it was missing, we put out a bulletin to all area agencies, and that was pretty big. So the police, they had a great question on their hands, what happened the night that Elsie died. What kind of evidence can we get from the scene that might lead to whoever is responsible?
After putting out an APB on Elsie's car, detectives returned to his home to further search for signs of robbery.
It wasn't uncommon for him to have, $25,000 in cash sitting out. Allegedly, he had quite a bit of cash in the house, $16,000 cash, plus the jewelry.
His jewelry and cash money was missing.
With every step, the robbery theory seems to be gaining credibility. There's just one problem.
His windows were locked. They had dust all over them. The doors were locked. There was no signs of any forced entry.
It appears Elsie was in fact robbed, but the killer had no problem getting inside, which makes the position of Elsie's body at the time of the fire all the more curious.
He was in his bed naked when they found him.
If an intruder had entered Elsie's home, why was he still lying naked in bed? Had he been asleep when the perpetrator entered the house?
The only reason to set a fire after the fact is to conceal and hide evidence.
Part of that mystery is explained 2 days later on July 6th, when the coroner's office conducts an autopsy of Elsie's body.
They said that he had not died from smoke inhalation or from anything due to the fire, but the fact that he had been shot in the head.
We had heard that somebody actually had killed him, and we just couldn't even imagine who that could be. I don't personally know of any enemies that Elsie had. And it was just a hard thing to take.
If you have a murder case, there's more information you need, DNA evidence.
Unfortunately, the coroner is unable to salvage much evidence from Elsie's charred remains.
The fire was so extensive that it even caused significant damage to the bullet that penetrated the body. They could only tell me what they thought, what kind of caliber it was, which was a .25 caliber.
Without physical evidence, it will be an uphill battle to identify Elsie's killer. Detectives begin that daunting task by attempting to determine the last person to see Elsie alive.
What do we got? Take a look at this.
We started looking at phone records immediately. Phone records showed, that he had received a call the day before on July 3rd, 10:30 at nighttime.
A quick trace of the number leads detectives to Elsie's new girlfriend, Melody Williams. In the hours before Elsie died, the two had called and texted each other about getting together.
Melody texted him several times that night.
There was a series of text messages between Elsie and Melody indicating that the two wanted to hook up.
Detectives need to find out if Melody did indeed see Elsie the night of the murder. That evening, they interview her.
Understand it's been quite a bit of a day for you, so we'll keep this short. You could please just answer a few questions for us.
Clearly, these two had a connection very early on in their relationship.
Melody was attracted to Elsie, and he treated her really well, and she loved that attention that she got from him.
But Melody informs detectives there was more to the relationship than meets the eye.
Elsie had relationships with other women.
Melody knew about what he liked to do on the side, but she chose to be in that situation. If she chose to continue to stay in that situation, I don't see how she could be disgruntled, because she's obviously getting what she needs.
Were you two together on the night of July the 3rd?
No. We talked about meeting up, but we never did.
Did he sound unusual, anxious, nervous on the phone when you spoke with him?
No. He sounded like himself. Elsie doesn't worry. Doesn't worry about anything.
Melody is unable to provide detectives with any leads as to who would kill her lover or why. But the fact that there are other women in Elsie's life creates a potential laundry list of suspects.
Police were looking at these other women. They had to figure out who of all the people in his sphere of influence could have done this to him. And the first obvious choice is a love interest.
Detectives decide to return to the crime scene, hoping to find clues that will lead them to one of Elsie's many lovers. But minutes into the search, they make a shocking discovery.
The police came across large amounts of cocaine, and naturally it changes everything when drugs are involved.
I found, almost 200 grams of crack cocaine, which is that's a significant amount of crack.
It seems that Elsie Lyons Jr. had been harboring a secret, one that could have landed him in the crosshairs of some very bad circumstances.
The fact that the murder was covered by a fire, to me, it was like an assassination.
In the suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, athlete turned entrepreneur Elsie Lyons Jr. and his well-heeled lover, Melody Williams, shared a steamy, no questions asked relationship.
Elsie was a guy who liked to date a lot of women at the same time. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too.
So when Elsie is found inside his burned-out house with a bullet in his head, police suspect robbery was the motive. Until Melody Williams reveals that Elsie was seeing a few other women. Could one of them have found out about Melody and murdered Elsie out of jealousy? No sooner have investigators started entertaining that theory than they find a potentially game-changing piece of evidence.
They discovered a large quantity of crack cocaine inside the house, and this led some investigators to think there was possibly a drug motive to this case.
As investigators ask around, they're shocked to learn that Elsie was in fact dealing narcotics.
He was the go-to guy for crack cocaine in the city of Toledo. He made his own crack, and he supplied to other dealers who worked for him. He wasn't even on our radar. We didn't even know anything about him until after the fact, and then started talking to people.
But even those in town who knew Elsie was dealing drugs claimed the affable 58-year-old was anything but your stereotypical criminal.
While he may have been a drug dealer, he had other parts that people chose to focus on, chose to envision him as and look at him as rather than sort of a seedy drug dealer. He managed to keep that impression out of the way people thought about him.
For most people, you think of the drug dealer as somebody who's standing on the street corner. You don't really think of someone living in the suburbs with a nice house and a nice car and nice jewelry. You don't really think of that person as someone who's dealing in drugs.
He dibbled and dabbed. He really wasn't into the life, because he had everything else going for him. He didn't want to really ruin that.
Regardless of Elsie's intentions, police know that Elsie's drug connections could certainly have exposed him to some hardened criminals.
Given the fact that he was involved in drugs, was he targeted by a rival drug dealer?
In fact, Elsie had expressed to some friends a fear that one such bad guy had targeted him for harassment.
There was one in particular guy that Elsie had told me about. It seemed like everywhere he went, the guy was there. I don't think he was paranoid like that. Throughout the day, he'd look up and there was this guy.
Elsie's friends tell police that the man who'd been harassing him is one Leonard Armstrong, the other big supplier of cocaine in Toledo.
Leonard had it in for LC. There was some issues with drugs there, drug territory.
I think at one point, this guy appeared and had a revolver and let LC see it.
LC. Hey, what's up, Leonard? I've been seeing you around and everything, and, just want to keep things cool, Yeah. Okay.
And LC got back in his car and went on about his business. So that made him pretty paranoid.
Investigators can't help but wonder, had Leonard Armstrong made good on his threats to LC? Police track down Armstrong and bring him in for questioning.
Mr. Armstrong, I appreciate you coming in to speak with me.
Yeah, anything I can do to help.
Though Leonard skirts around his involvement in the local drug trade, he does acknowledge that he and LC had their fair share of disagreements in the past.
Did you ever threaten LC?
I know we didn't always see eye to eye on everything, but, his business was his business.
Did you ever threaten LC with a gun?
I mean, come on. There's a lot of posing and posturing goes on in our game, but nothing that serious.
Leonard was a dope boy, He did a lot, but he never was like the murderer, beating up nobody type guy, All he wanted to do was make money and go home.
Maybe so, but detectives refused to take Leonard Armstrong's statement at face value. On July 15th, they subpoena his phone records, but find nothing placing him in the area of LC's house the night of the murder.
When you started going through all the evidence, there was nothing there to link him to the crime.
With Leonard Armstrong all but ruled out, police are back to square one. None of the stolen jewelry has surfaced at area pawn shops, and there's still no sign of LC's missing vehicle.
We didn't have a whole lot of information at the time. We were kind of getting bits and pieces of information from people as they were getting it. And I don't know if it was because that they didn't want us to be upset, because the relationship that my husband Lamont had with LC, they were very, very close. I just think that they limited what they were giving us until they knew more.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. The rumors that were out there and people calling saying, I heard that he was tied to the bed.
That he knew too much about somebody and they wanted to shut him up.
Allegedly, he had run-ins with some big-time drug dealers up in the city of Detroit.
There were rumors some gang had got him and pulled out all his teeth.
Police hear a lot of theories, but not one of them is backed by a shred of evidence.
It was just crazy stuff. I remember talking to his brother, Lamont, and right off the bat, he says, I know there had to have been a woman involved in this.
Detectives turn their attention back to LC's many girlfriends.
What's interesting in this case is he kind of had more than one girlfriend.
After compiling a list of LC's current and former lovers, detectives ask friends and family if any of the names stand out. One that keeps coming up is Gwen Wright.
She was the last girlfriend that LC had been with, and it was natural that investigators would look at her as a suspect.
We had kind of a love-hate relationship. When we loved, and when we fought.
Anytime you have a off-again, on-again relationship, and now that it's off, there's always concerns there that, could this person have been angry or upset with this person and want to do them harm.
It didn't take Gwen long to realize that from time to time, LC, he would have a wandering eye. He'd find himself being interested in other girls. But that was kind of this sort of love-hate relationship that these two had. And what's also interesting is that not long before the fire started, Gwen was actually living in that house in Sylvania Township with LC. And so one of the things the police were looking at was she jealous of any relationship that he may have been having with Melody.
And given the fact that Gwen lived with LC as recently as 2010, police believe it's entirely possible she still had keys to LC's house, which could explain the lack of forced entry at the crime scene.
That's a big key right there to show that he probably knows this person, because he's not going to let a stranger in.
At this point, detectives have one goal and one goal only: find Gwen Wright and bring her in for questioning. But when they do, they'll find out more than they ever bargained for.
I didn't trust anyone at that point. Friends he had for years and years, I just didn't know.
You just kind of suspect of everybody.
In the suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, police are on the hunt for the killer of enigmatic businessman LC Lyons Jr. To some, he was the friendly, teetotaling health nut who made a small fortune in real estate. To others, he was the former Lothario who made enemies in the drug game and in the bedroom.
A lot of people in his neighborhood were shocked. They had no idea that this man who had lived next to them for a number of years, mowed people's lawns, was involved in drugs.
But after ruling out the drug angle, investigators are focused on one of LC's many lovers, former live-in girlfriend, Gwen Wright.
They wanted to determine, was there a motive, a reason why she might have wanted him dead?
Investigators asked Gwen to come down to the station and question her about their relationship. According to Gwen, the biggest source of conflict in their decades-long affair was LC's roving eye.
I mean, it was never in my face, whatever he was doing with other women. He kept that from me.
Gwen kind of looked the other way, and she lived in that house with him for a while, and then, things went rocky between them again, so she moved out.
Gwen tells police she and LC called it quits about a year ago. Just a few months later, LC began seeing Melody. Investigators can't help but wonder, did LC and Melody's budding romance prompt Gwen to murder LC in a fit of jealousy?
So I've got to ask, where were you on the night of July the 3rd?
It was on a Sunday. I was at home.
So you weren't at LC's house?
I told you, we were through.
So you didn't murder LC?
Absolutely not.
She was at home asleep when the fire happened. And for police, there isn't really a way to verify that kind of an alibi.
One thing that is verifiable is Gwen's grief over LC's death.
It was just like it wasn't even real. I just didn't know what to believe.
She had dated LC for a number of years. I know that she was always there for him and vice versa. So I think that they had a pretty close relationship.
Given Gwen's reaction to LC's death and the fact that there's no tangible evidence tying her to the crime, detectives change tactics and treat Gwen less like a suspect and more like someone whose intimate knowledge of LC can help them solve the case.
They were asking me personal things about how did he sleep? Did he sleep clothed?
Gwen had told us in her interview that LC always slept with his underwear on, always. The only time that he didn't have his underwear on is if he was going to have sex. And sure enough, when he was found, he didn't have any underwear on at all. He was naked.
That information that she gave them kind of helped police realize that this may have been a murder that had a sexual motive to it.
But just as investigators wrap up their interview with Gwen Wright, they receive another break in the case.
LC's vehicle was found and recovered by Toledo police.
They got the vehicle. It's an apartment complex right off Franklin Bancroft area where he worked.
Found it parked, in kind of a out-of-the-way spot.
When detectives look inside, it's almost deja vu.
It had attempted to be burned, but it didn't go up in flames. But what was left behind in that car was a pack of wooden green tip matches and a bottle of lighter fluid.
The green matches are identical to the ones found inside LC's home the night of the crime. But what's most striking is the car's location. It's in the neighborhood of LC's love interest, Melody Williams.
They found his vehicle not far away from where she lived. It's sort of a red flag.
Investigators ask LC's family what they know about LC's new lady.
I had never heard her name before, just even in general conversation over the phone. Usually if he's kind of seriously dating someone, I had heard her name.
The odd thing is that nobody in Elsie's family knew who Melody was. Elsie really didn't view Melody as a serious girlfriend.
Detectives decide it's time to pay the latest object of Elsie's affection another visit. This time around, Melody's not nearly as cooperative.
Second time she refused to answer any questions, period. That was when we did a search warrant at her house.
In the kitchen, detectives find something that seems to connect Melody to both the murder at Elsie's house and the destruction of his car.
What was key at that house was we found matches, those green tip matches. We found those at her house.
Wooden matchsticks are rather common, but the fact that the police found green-tipped matchsticks, that raised their interest.
The discovery of these matches seems to tie Melody to the murder. But when police subpoena her cell phone records, they'll begin to question everything they know about the case, about Melody, and about her connection to LC Lyons Jr. Successful businessman LC Lyons Jr. and his lover Melody Williams had a budding fling, cut short by LC's violent death. But when the same brand of matches used to torch LC's house and car are found in Melody's home, police begin to believe she may be the one responsible for his death. Further connecting Melody to the crime are the series of phone calls between them, which suggest the two met up the night of the crime in order to have sex, a theory further supported by the state of Elsie's body at the time of the murder.
All the evidence that was collected at the scene pointed at her.
Wanting to learn more about Melody, investigators perform a background check and discover Melody, like Elsie, was harboring some pretty big secrets.
A couple years prior, she was involved in a lawsuit against Chrysler. Chrysler did end up settling with her, and she walked away with a 6-figure settlement.
She actually blew through the money in just a couple of years. And by the time she met LC, she was actually very broke.
I think for a lot of people, when they all of a sudden come into a lot of money, they spend wildly. And that's what she did here.
Investigators also discover an interesting text exchange that occurred the day after the murder between Melody and her ex-husband, James Wilson.
Melody had told her ex-husband, you know what, I've got this business proposition for you.
Detectives think this business proposition was Melody's ploy to enlist James' help committing this crime in exchange for some quick cash.
She was sort of looking at LC as perhaps a meal ticket. So when Melody goes over to LC's house and she sees the jewelry lying on the dresser and all this cash laying about, she's realized, I've just hit the jackpot.
Coincidentally, James Wilson has just been arrested by the ATF on charges involving illegal firearms. On July 22nd, James is questioned about his alleged role in the murder of Elsie Lyons.
When Elsie was murdered, he was robbed, okay? And a lot of it was stolen, okay? And we're looking for a lot of that stuff. Do you know where that stuff is at?
No, sir. Well, I would like to talk to my attorney before I keep answering questions.
James Wilson is unwilling to cooperate, but thankfully another individual has come forward with information. Melody's cousin, Justin Warren. Justin tells detectives that he thinks Melody might be involved in Elsie's murder, but he's cagey as to how he knows.
I know that she did it.
How do you know she did it?
She was there.
You know, I didn't know what to expect, and all of a sudden, he tells me, I went to the house with her. He said that on the night of the 3rd, Melody showed up at his house.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, Melody, what are you doing?
I need your help.
What is wrong with you?
I need to know how you get rid of something.
Get rid of what?
How do you cover something up?
I guess the best way is to burn it. What's wrong?
Okay, come help me.
Then, according to Justin, Melody drove him over to Elsie's house.
He said he sat in the driveway while she went inside, and he said she was in there for, a minute, and she come back out, and the house was on fire.
She gets into the car, they drive off, and they throw the gun into the Maumee River, where it was never found.
Detectives are confident that Melody Williams is their killer, but with no murder weapon, no DNA evidence, and none of Elsie's jewelry having been recovered, Justin Warren's statement is not enough to bring charges.
Circumstantial evidence. They kept saying that they didn't want to try her too soon. We don't want something to come up later and we can't get a conviction.
Months pass with no arrest. Elsie's family worries his killer will never be brought to justice.
Detective Reddick told me it would be a while, and I said I'm gonna be patient because I know you doing the best you can. And it got to be frustrating, but it was out of my hands.
I've seen this time and time again. Families get so frustrated with the police thinking that they're not doing anything when in fact they just sort of don't want to show all their cards because they feel like that might jeopardize the progress that they've already made in the case.
Meanwhile, it begins to really sink in that they'll never see their loved one again.
Elsie was always a role model for my husband. And I know that he loved him, more than a brother would love a brother.
Just the thought of living without my brother, it just, it hit down hard, and it had me down and out for a while. I had to fight back hard to come back to be the man that he groomed me to be.
Then, in what can best be described as miraculous, a pair of investigators stumble upon the missing piece of evidence.
There came a point where some detectives with the Sylvania Township Police Department decided to take a trip to Detroit. Nothing work-related, but they were actually just going to go to the casino and hang out. And while they were there, they decided to go to a couple of the pawn shops. And to their astonishment, at one of the pawn shops, they found Elsie's missing lion's head pendant.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So they got all the records of the sale, and the sale of that Lion's Head pendant was by Melody's ex-husband.
Equally as damning is the date of the transaction. Less than 24 hours after Melody's text to her ex-husband about a business proposition. Finally, on October 11th, 2012, over a year after Elsie's remains were discovered, the Lucas County Grand Jury indicts Melody Williams on charges of aggravated murder, robbery, arson, and tampering with evidence.
It was a shock that it was a woman. It was a shock that it was a woman. Because we thought of him as this big, strong man, invincible, I guess is what we were all thinking. I think that it was a shock.
It was a sense of relief. When the arrest was made, we were happy.
We were pretty confident that they had captured the person that had done the crime.
But even behind bars, Melody Williams remains confident that she'll beat the charges against her. As they begin preparing for trial, Lucas County prosecutors have a gnawing feeling Melody might be right.
Her involvement in the arson, it could be established without much of a problem. But the murder was a very circumstantial case.
But not even Perry Mason could predict the bold gamble Melody was about to take. One that could make or break the case against her.
It was unusual. I think surprise or shock would be appropriate.
After a grueling 15-month investigation, police have charged Melody Williams with the murder of her lover, Elsie Lyons Jr. But with a lack of physical evidence connecting Melody to the murder, prosecutors decide to offer Melody a plea deal.
Prosecutors approached her with a plea deal. They would charge her with arson and theft and have her serve just 12 years in prison.
Despite the sweetheart deal, Melody refuses to play ball.
Melody felt very confident, so she turned it down.
But if Melody's decision to take the case to trial is surprising, what she does next is flat-out jaw-dropping.
She fired her lawyer and decided to represent herself.
I was floored. I did not expect that at all.
The old saying is, if you represent yourself, you have a fool for a client. I wouldn't advise anybody to represent themselves.
However, those familiar with Melody's past and her ability to finagle a six-figure legal settlement aren't so sure she doesn't have another ace up her sleeve.
Melanie was convinced that she could win her case and be acquitted of these charges.
On March 4th, 2013, the case of the state of Ohio versus Melody Williams gets underway. In their opening statements, prosecutors present their theory that Melody Williams killed Elsie Lyons. The motive, they say, was money.
From what the evidence showed, she just wanted what he had. A little money, a little jewelry, whatever she could pick up around the house.
To support their claim, prosecutors point out the fact that Melody had blown through all of her settlement money and most of her retirement savings.
She had the money, she went through it and blew it, and now she has nothing again. She's back to nothing.
Prosecutors also claim that when Melody met Elsie, she saw the perfect target.
I'm sure that seeing somebody putting 30 grand down on the table, walking around with opulent jewelry can sort of be tempting for somebody who's in a tough financial situation.
Prosecutors also point to the text messages between Melody and Elsie, which support the theory that she used sex to seduce him, then shot him after he fell asleep.
He falls asleep and got a .22 bullet put in his head.
After shooting Elsie, prosecutors say Melody took a bag of jewelry and $16,000 cash and fled the scene in Elsie's car.
So that to me sort of said that it wasn't a sort of heat in the moment situation.
After laying out the scenario, the prosecution calls their star witness, Melody's cousin, Justin Warren. In exchange for immunity, Justin testifies that in the early morning hours of July 4th, Melody asked him for help.
Hey, I need your help with something.
She tells him, listen, I've done something really bad and I got to figure out what to do. And Justin sort of suggests that they burn the house to sort of cover up this crime. So while Justin is waiting in the driveway, Melody sets fire to the house.
According to Justin, after burning down Elsie's house, they drove to a pier 15 miles away on the Maumee River, where Melody dropped the gun into the murky depths. Finally, they lit Elsie's car on fire, though it never fully caught flame.
As it turns out, Justin proved to be a treasure trove of information for police in this case. He basically laid out exactly what happened that night.
To explain what happened after that, prosecutors submit the text exchange between Melody and James, as well as LC's lion's head pendant that James pawned in Detroit.
She was the mastermind behind the whole thing.
Prosecutors also bring up the unique green-tipped matches used to torch LC's house and car, which were also found in Melody's home.
I did some checking with the match company and found out that those green tip matches, they're sold in packs of 8. Well, you had the 1 pack found in his car, and we took 7 packs out of her house. So you add that up, that's 8. Additionally, the matches were sold at a gas station or at a grocery store, right around the corner from her house.
When it's time for her defense, Melody opens by explaining to the jury that she's no lawyer. Melody's choice to defend herself might seem crazy on the surface, but it becomes clear in her opening statements that she's thought long and hard about her defense strategy.
Melody raised some questions about some professional associates of LC. Basically, what she was trying to say was that it could have been some competing drug dealer.
According to Melody, several people had the motivation to want LC dead, including rival drug dealer Leonard Armstrong, or even LC's former live-in girlfriend Gwen Wright. Melody even calls Gwen to the stand to publicly accuse her of the murder.
She's asking me, well, did you have a key? I said, yeah, I had a key. Like she wanted to throw me under the bus.
As for Justin Warren's testimony, Melody suggests her cousin could easily have robbed Elsie on his own and given the lion's head pendant to her ex-husband to pawn.
Well, Melody's main strategy in the courtroom was to raise doubt that not that she didn't do it, but that there was a possibility that someone else did.
It's a surprisingly effective strategy, one that prosecutors are careful not to attack too aggressively.
Here this woman is with no attorney, and we can't come across like we're the big bad prosecutors are beating her up, so that can really turn the jury off.
On March 8, 2013, after 4 days of testimony, Melody rests her case. As the jury adjourns for deliberations, she's confident they'll set her free.
She was convinced that she was gonna beat the charge and be released.
If the jury sort of bought the story that she was selling, that she was this innocent person, that she was perhaps being framed, that none of what the prosecution was saying was actually true, and if they liked her, then they might not like the prosecution if they felt like this person was being attacked. This person is innocent.
Melody's confidence is sorely misplaced. After just 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury finds Melody Williams guilty on all counts.
When the verdict was announced, we were relieved.
Just to be able to have some sort of closure.
If she needed money, all she had to do was ask. It's senseless why she did what she did. She had to be crazy.
The convicted killer shows no emotion.
She thought in her head that she could portray herself as being a sweet, likable person, intelligent, and I thought she thought she could sway the jurors in her favor. But that just kind of goes to show the egotistical part of her, and it backfired on her. I talked to the jurors afterwards, and the jurors did not like her. They did not like her at all.
The judge sentences Melody to a minimum of 59 years in prison.
Hindsight is 20/20. I'm sure if Melody had a second chance, she might take that offer presented to her by the prosecutors. They offered her 12 years. She wound up being sentenced to 59 years, which means she'll probably die in prison.
It's just amazing how quick, you could be kicking it with a girl, and next thing you know, you're being bound and gagged, because you thought it was love, but it was actually greed.
And while the whole sordid affair exposed a dark side to Elsie Lyons that few knew existed, the former football star turned beloved business icon is missed by many.
My heart, it's broken. I'm brokenhearted. I am. That's the only man that could make me laugh.
He was bigger than life. A lot of people miss him. He's still here with us. Spirit. Had him strong spirit. Yeah, he's still here with us.